Hi, and welcome to The Reset. I'm Norman Guadagno, the CMO at Acoustic, and we are producing this series as a way to discuss with thought leaders in marketing and other disciplines how their companies are dealing with the changes that have been going on in 2020 and now in 2021. And I am thrilled to be here today with Drew Fortin, the SVP of Sales and Marketing at the Predictive Index. Welcome, Drew.
Thanks so much for having me, Norman. Happy to be here.
Great. So, Drew, we're going to hopefully cover a lot, and we're going to cover your gorgeous guitars behind you there. It was actually one of my goals for 21 is to relearn the guitar because I learned when I was a kid, as many of us do, and then just didn't do anything of it for 40 some odd years. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to relearn. And so I dropped the money to buy myself a beautiful new Fender electric guitar over the holidays and slowly working my way through. So it seems like you're probably a lot more expert than I am.
Well, having these hung here kind of makes me feel it's more so to shame me into playing, because I used to play a lot. I played a lot of rock music, went to music school, and being a father as well, I have two young boys, 6 and 2. Whenever I pick up the guitar, they want to come in and just strum away. So I don't get as much time to myself to do that. So this is good inspiration. Once in a while, I can pick up for a few minutes and play.
I love it. I've been told by people who've sell training that all I need is 10 minutes a day, and I'll be strumming away in no time. So I'm working on it. Well, Drew, thank you for joining us. I want to get right into it and just ask you, if you could, to explain what is the Predictive Index, because some of our viewers may not have heard of it or be familiar with what you do. I know it's a super fascinating business, and maybe you can give us an overview.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so the Predictive Index, we help businesses do talent optimization. We're a talent optimization platform. And so ultimately, we help businesses map their people strategy to their business strategy, right? Norman, every business strategy has clues that give businesses and leadership teams an idea of what sort of leadership team they need, abilities they need, culture and values they need to bring that strategy to life. And then once you have that, it makes it much easier to understand how to build that team, who you should bring on, right? Who you should hire the best fits. And then when it comes to managers, right? Management, especially now, and I know we'll talk about this in a bit, right? We need to lead, and we need to drive people the way they were meant to be driven, and we need to have collaboration. So we need to give managers the tools they need to inspire their teams. And then over we need to measure employee engagement. We need to measure performance of our people and go back and influence that design or that hiring or inspire policy over time. And the Predictive Index platform provides technology, tools, and services to do that.
Cool. So it sounds like there's a lot of knowledge behind what you do. So that I suspect, and I may have done a little research and know a little bit about this, but I suspect there's a lot of research that helps drive these tools. And I suspect also that there's a lot of interactivity with your customers and how they use the tools, and how you can help them understand these types of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's over 65 years of science and data. PI was founded in the 50s by this guy named Arnold Daniels, who really got intrigued by psychometrics after being in the U.S. Army as a bombing pilot. And the roots are in psychometric assessments. Now, over the 6 years, PI has been under business ownership, and we've taken what has become a behavioral assessment company and turned it into this talent optimization platform. So assessments are this science collection mechanism. So we collect behavioral data on people, cognitive data on people. We collect data from businesses on what types of strategy they have, how engaged their employees are, and we give people a platform in which we mash up that data and provide analysis, insights, prediction around strengths, caution areas, gaps between team collaboration, strategy, etc. So lots of data behind it, millions of data points collected all the time. It's really exciting to be in this business at this moment.
Yeah, I bet. And we'll get back to that data in a moment, because I'm super fascinated with the types of data you have, and the reports that you produce, which I've taken a look at, and some of the things that some of the insights that you have, particularly as we think about this larger situation. I am curious, though, as to sort of how you ended up here. I always love to know how people end up doing what they do, and what got you to be head of sales and marketing at the Predictive Index.
I'm also very curious too. Yeah, no.
How did I end up here is what we ask ourselves each day.
I am very fortunate to be in the position that I am. I think, and I remind myself of that every day and couldn't be more grateful. I've been in sales and marketing my whole career. I've worked in e-commerce, marketing technology, local media and advertising, in the last 6 years here at the Predictive Index in talent optimization. And, myself in the PI vernacular, I'm what we call a maverick, right? I love to vision. I love to inspire and motivate people. I don't need a lot of structure and process. I can function without that. What I love to do is take old stuff and make it new again, or take something old and reinvent it and provide value in today's world. So coming across working for the Predictive Index was like a light bulb moment for me. And then now over the last, it'll be 6 years in May that I've been at the Predictive Index. I started as VP of marketing and really came on board. Here's a company founded in the 50s, family owned and operated pretty much up until that point that I joined, and had outdated distribution model, outdated technology, but amazing brand affinity. When you talk to somebody that has used a Predictive Index or has been exposed to the insights that it provides, even for their own behavior, they're like, it was awesome. And I remember using that as a team. And I remember the trust and cohesion and collaboration it helped us do. So it was really about capturing the essence of that when I first started. We redefined the brand a little bit, really stood ourselves up. Now we're a product-led growth company, but we deliver through a network of PS certified partners, talent optimization consultants all over the world. So it was really, making sure that we were supporting the network, and we were making PI not the best kept secret anymore for a few business leaders and HR people, but making it proliferating the market with it, helping more businesses do talent optimization. So over the last six years, it's gone from being a pure, let's create demand and let's start to build this business into, wow, what our consultants have been doing over the past several decades is actually a discipline. It's this discipline of optimization. And it was through that realization that my role has also evolved from being VP of marketing to head of sales and marketing, to my role is really thinking about go to market for the company. What's happening in the market today? Our ear is always to the ground, and looking at what AI is capable of doing and providing value in the market for talent optimization. What products should we be developing? So taking this behavioral assessment company, turning it into a software platform, and now turning it into a product-led growth company. Our goal is to get optimization in the hands of every business leader everywhere in the world. And I'm fortunate enough to kind of consider our sales and marketing team, our go-to-market function, as the tip of the spear. And it's been awesome. I have these business books. We were chatting before we started recording about this. I'm just a huge geek to all this stuff. So I'm also fortunate because I read books like a maniac, and I love business books. I love frameworks. I love learning more about leadership and inspiring others to really dive in and be great leaders. And so my off time work, I spend reading all these books, and it helps us better. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrific. And I, like you, I'm a dedicated reader, and love always finding new ideas, interacting with people, reading books, now trying to spend more time sharing through my own writing and other forums, because it sort of feeds everybody when you get to sort of share those ideas. I have 16, maybe 18 questions just coming out of everything you said there, but I won't get to all of them.
Shoot!
I have a big one, because a lot of what I've been talking about in this series and others was, of course, we all know 2020 was a unique year, for lack of a better term anymore. And there was a lot of transformation, We had people working at home. We had dealing with all of the issues we all know we dealt with in
Yeah.
2020. Somehow magically on January 1st, 2021, everything got better. Well, maybe not. But as we move into this year, I want to spend a little time looking back and a lot of time looking forward. And the first thing I want to ask you is, obviously your business is taking the pulse of people, dealing with how people are performing and dealing with talent. What did you learn last year? What changed? What insights did this massive transformation yield?
Sure. So it's been an amazing internal journey for PI that we've kind of flipped inside out and turned into our latest product release. We're just coming up on. Well, next week we have a big release for it. We call it Dream Teams. Ultimately, what happened in the market happened to PI as well. We recently we just produced a CEO benchmark report for last year. And majority of companies, over almost 70% of companies, experienced some sort of reduction in force or reorg change last year. That's huge, right?
Yep.
Over almost 100% of companies are saying they're now going to allow remote work indefinitely in some capacity. And then we saw the top rung of what are your top business challenges. Finding the best talent has been at the top for the last several years. And we finally saw that drop and get outmatched by team collaboration. My team work better together. So that's huge. And that, I would say also internally at PI was what we went through. Business leaders were like, oh crap, COVID's coming. What's going to happen to our strategy? Do we hold off on hiring? Do we pivot? What's going to happen? Well, what has happened to the rest of the org when these business leaders are having these decisions is they feel like their work is getting ripped out of their hands because the business leader's like, give me the steering wheel. I'm going to drop it. Everyone's like, okay, that's probably a good idea. But at the same time, what's my role? What's your, what should we be doing? Am I confident in what's happening? Right. All of these things are transpiring. In that, we're losing trust and faith in each other because we're working remotely and we don't get these normal cues we see every day. So it's only exacerbating this tension. So it brings us back, which is awesome. And it brought PI back to it too. The fundamentals of resilience and trust. We need to trust each other. We need to build collaboration. And you don't do that once. You don't do that once a year. You need to inject it in everything you do. You need to constantly remind your team about how important to have trust. Remind your team that they are trusted. Show them that they are trusted. Have them show you that you are trusted in order to move in this and to have success in this. So we use the opportunity to really look inward, to rely on our differentiators, right? Because any strategy is defined by your key differentiators. For us, it's our partner network. So we really first and foremost went to our partner network and said, hey, we need to make sure that we are tightly aligned. Let's make sure that you're okay. We immediately pivoted a portion of our business management workshops and training aside from our software. And we were not virtualized in any way and prepared to do that. And we, in 2 weeks, had a virtual curriculum, trained all of our partners, and we're delivering that to
That's great.
And offering it free, offering a resilience training. And then that was like, all right, now that our partners feel good and our clients know that we're there to support them. Now let's think about our product roadmap. And now let's think about what we should be developing for. And that problem that I told you about where the leaders are taking over and there's that loss of confidence. What we need right now, we need a dream team. We need to feel like we have a dream team.
Absolutely.
We need to feel that. We need to feel that. And so PI is uniquely positioned because we're able to show you multiple people on a team and say, hey, based off of this is your team type. We're also able to say, based off of what you're telling us about your strategy, this is your strategy type. Here are the strengths between your team and your strategy. Here are the caution areas and blind spots. Now that you know this, you shouldn't go ahead and change your team right now. You should probably modify your strategy a bit. You should probably reorg a little bit so you're best equipped to execute that strategy. So our Dream Teams product, which is releasing next week, We have a Dream Team Summit happening next Tuesday. Is all about taking a team on that path. What is our team type? What is our strategy type? How do I work? How do you work? And what's the work to be done? And let's go crush it.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. One of the things you spoke about in there, Drew, was this concept of trust, right? And creating trust, making sure people feel trusted. Something I've written about as well, which is this sort of erosion of trust that the past year has made us wary of other people who all wear masks now, of what we read in the news, of things that go on. And when we communicate this way via video, it's not the same as being live and being in person and creating that type of communication. So I agree completely that finding ways to build that trust is so critical, and making sure that you do it on a regular basis. What's sort of one, I want to get back to some of the other topics, what's just one sort of way you see as to help build trust in teams? Like what's a handy tip that
Sure.
you could provide on building trust in teams?
So one of the from a leadership perspective, to kind of inspire others to go on a leadership journey and build trust, a key is being vulnerable. Right? People do want to see that you are going to lead, but it shouldn't always be rainbows and kittens in the business. It shouldn't always be rainbows and kittens for yourself. So it's important to show your team that you're a person, and it's important to say, hey, when situations are intense, I tend to react this way. So just so you know, right, this could be happening, and if you see it, I want you to call me out on it, right? That's going to go far in building trust, and it's kind of paying it forward. Somebody else is going to think like, oh, I should probably mention that too. And these are things that I personally call terms and conditions and wrappers. We have to be much more upfront about those things. Like, hey, this is happening, or thank you for giving me that feedback. Before I respond, let me let you know that sometimes my responses can seem harsh, direct, right? That is going to make people more accepting and willing and understanding of each other. And over time, conditions and those wrappers will fall away, and we'll be able to talk to each other more, stop having to focus on that, and we focus more on getting the work done and less concerned about the trust and confidence in each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, and I agree completely. Right, showing vulnerability. I know for myself and folks that I interact with, and some of the folks I may coach, I try to remind them regularly that we're forced into remote work.
That's right.
Cannot be genuine when you're still hiding behind PowerPoint slides on a video call.
And Norman, you bring that up. I'm a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. We put a positive spin on it, and we call it the triangle of trust, right? It starts with trust. You have trust, you can have conflict. You have conflicts, you can commit, accountability, results. I tell my team all the time, the opposite of trust is suspicion. So the moment that you're doubting, the moment that you're judging, that means you do not have trust, right? So it's actually really to spot and identify when you see it. It's really hard to that you don't.
Right. Yep. No, it's well said. And I would sort of say the opposite of trust is PowerPoint, but too harsh on a lovely tool. So but you can never. You said something earlier that I thought was interesting as well, which is this, seeing the war for the best talent sort of take a notch down as a priority as people sort of focus on building the best teams. And do you feel that that's a trend that may actually have legs, where this sort of maniacal focus on, I got to get the best person, they're going to solve all our problems, versus I have to find the person that's going to fit for what my strategy is, what my team makeup is, what my needs are? I think that's a trend that should have momentum, and I'd love to understand more about that.
That is absolutely a trend, and I 100% agree with you. It should have momentum, and I think it is getting momentum. Right? There's a quote from the movie 300, right, where it's like, you may have more you may have a bigger army, but I have more soldiers, right? And it's it's the notion of there's this dynamic, right? There's this thing that clicks on that team.
Yep.
And you can get somebody that has the most amazing experience in the world and maybe has an amazing track record, but just because you've been a great CEO or a great CMO doesn't mean you're going to be the great CMO in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. As you just said, it's the right team, the right strategy, the right makeup. So as far as go, I think that's a huge one. And I think that if we look to professional sports, we see that in sports, right?
Yes, of course.
Moneyball, Billy Bean, right? Understanding when you have more confidence and faith in the data to objectively understand how somebody's going to perform, you are more willing to bring them into something and give them a role they may have never done before, right? Because they're like, oh, they have this magical power, and with our magical power, this is pretty cool, right?
Yep.
You see that happen, and so I do think this evolution of you're no longer going to be hired for exactly what you know. You're going to be much more hired for who you are, which is great because people are typically hired for what they know and fired for who they are. So if we get hired for people who they are, that would be really great. And I think we're going to see this evolution from in business and with talent itself is, there's that notion of the deer have guns, right? The business is no longer in control. People want to work for a company that identifies with their soul, with their values, that shows empathy, feels empathy, and people want to be at work and doing something they know is in line with their values and hopefully is providing some sort of value or making the world a better place. And if you can't do that, then you're going to lose. So more and more employees, the next generations of employees are going to be looking for that. And these employees with these new data platforms, even talent optimization, understanding people better and faith and confidence in this data is, I think, going to lead to a long-term evolution of the best talent maybe having agency versus businesses going and find them. So I do think looking to sports, there are so many parallels there.
Yeah, I agree. And I've used that analogy myself in the past, and I think it's the case. Although as you were saying that, it sort of set my brain wandering down a different path, which is thinking about some of the best research that we've seen over the past decade or so around teams and the dynamics of teams and how to get them to perform came out of Google. And now it's all over the news. If you've been reading that, there's a portion of the employees at Google that are attempting to unionize and that are pushing back and that don't believe that the sort of Google sort of ethos that they signed up for is what the company is anymore. And that's been in the news quite a bit. I'm not employed by Google. I'm not an expert on it, but sort of watching from the outside, I'm seeing this interesting shift away from sort of a company like Google being, okay, everybody wants to go there and they're going to treat their employees so fantastically. And they did a lot of research and a lot of interesting things that came out of it. To now where employees are saying, whoa, maybe I did get that, but I felt like the company as an entity was going down a path that I wasn't comfortable with.
Yes, you're bringing up an excellent point. So Google was, revolutionary in bringing like workforce analytics and to the world. And the notion, I think, of psychological safety and that kind of being like a household name in businesses and the cultural lexicons of companies comes out of that, right?
Absolutely.
And Google is one of the first companies we know that really wore their heart on their sleeve since the beginning, whether it's their colors or their work environment or their culture. It was values, right?
Do no evil.
Yeah. And so if you think about do no evil and you think about why people are starting to resist, right, Google as it gets big and people start to question its place, what it's doing, is the question is Google staying true to its values? Right. And values may have to evolve as the company gets bigger because it's so much more powerful now than it was. And so, yeah, do no evil is a great one, but there are probably some other things that they need to level set and check internally and say, is this in line with their values or not? Right. I know, for instance, like Mark Benioff at Salesforce is like on the other side, like making sure
absolutely.
lets his employees know that you're right. I'm going to listen to you. This is not aligned with their values, so we're going to do something about it, or we're going to adapt our values. Those are really hard discussions, and you don't hear a lot from Google about that.
No, I think it's a fertile topic for discussion as we see this transformation taking place, particularly in sort of white collar, intellectually driven enterprises like tech companies. I'm a veteran of Microsoft myself. I sort of went through. I was there during the Ballmer years. I see what's happened in the post-Ballmer years. It's transformative when a company changes what it truly is about, what it believes, and how it operates, and that then permeates the organization throughout. And back to the discussion around sort of forming those dream teams, it's not just that they're going to hopefully be more successful, and I'm a big believer that the right team of the right people can be successful. But I think it has an impact on the senior leadership, where the senior leadership has to reframe what their expectations are for the company. I know you mentioned earlier your CEO survey, and I'd love to understand some more of the sort of things that you've learned. And I'll sort of start that off with, I just read an article, maybe this morning or yesterday, I think it was HBR, on analysis of CEO performance. If you're familiar with the fact that companies who hire CEOs tend to want people who've been CEOs before. Sort of, it's hard to get that first time in the CEO chair. Yet this piece of research, which I'll make sure we reference when we post this, showed that CEOs performed worse in their second CEO job than they did in their first CEO job. They brought the same playbook with them. They ran the same plays. They didn't look at the unique situation that we're entering into. So with that sort of as a recent piece of data I was just sort of looking at, what are some insights that you gained around the CEO as that leader and how they set that sort of stage for the business?
Yeah, and I think what you're bringing up, right, and we can put the focus on CEOs, but I think you could probably translate that to any leader, which
it does, for sure.
It's the whole notion of what got you here won't get you there, and there are definitely career CEOs who have figured out, right, I work best in this type of company that's going through this sort of change, and if you can execute the same playbook, you can have 3 or 4 amazing, right? Entrances and exits, which is fantastic. Really, what it's about, though, then is this was what I found so fascinating about this journey we're on at PI and bringing the world along on educating them on talent optimization. Is there are CEOs, there are business leaders that are doing it intuitively. There are CEOs that just aren't and can't. And so without technology to aid you, intuition doesn't scale, right? So we can start to take some of those elements and make intuition scalable by providing these technologies and these tools and these analyses. And so I do think that we are going to start to see more of a shift in less about I've been a CEO in this industry, so I'm going to cookie cut through this industry, and more so about I'm a CEO that's cut out for this type of opportunity, right? We need to completely shift and change the org. We need to expand. We need to get through this really trying time. Those are different types of personalities, and it's much easier to embark on a strategy and to build a team that's more like you, right? I'll just say it, right? Yep. We obviously need diversity in people and thought and cultures. That makes us more resilient. But when we think about the business strategy itself, it often mimics what that business leader's persona is because they created it. Right. And this is one of those notions of, I tell when we have partners that come through our launch class, I tell them this all the time. One of the things that is we put up on a pedestal and we idolize Silicon Valley startup culture, right? Yep. And in a lot of ways, it has startup to startup technology they have a lot of similarities, as they should, because that's how you start a technology company. That's the type of culture that a startup needs. That same culture is not going to work for a huge company or a company that's 100 years old and needs to change and revamp itself. So you can get some learnings from it, but that is not the only way. It's one way. And for CEOs, right, we need to understand that there are scores of duty, and you're likely going to have in this business cycle of an org, and hopefully you never go down. You're like, oh, we want to go again, we want to go up again. Each one of those phases, and have different business leaders take you through it.
Yeah, I it's so well said, and that you have to figure out the right leader for the right time. I often think that, when I think about this problem, and I want to, if I ever have to find another job again, I happen to like the one I have, but I want to rewrite my resume. So the beginning part of it is, these are the type of situations in which I thrive, and these are the type of situations which I don't thrive, because I think that I've been doing this long enough as an executive that I understand what sort of situations I'm going to thrive in and which I'm not, and what sort of teams I'm looking for, and environment I'm looking for, and challenges I'm looking for. And to me, that is much more interesting than have I ever done demand gen or a brand or whatever. I've done all those things. That's not really relevant. What's relevant is, where can I have impact as an executive, as a leader, as an individual contributor as well. And when I look to hire people, I'm so focused on where they can have impact. And
That's right.
I've gotten to the point, honestly, where after hiring a lot of people at this company, at my previous company, typically for most of the people that come in, I only ask them 2 or 3 questions. And that really comes down to, what do you want to do? What kind of environment do you want to be in where you do that thing? And what do you hope to learn while you're in that environment doing that thing? And I found that by just asking those 3 questions, I get more insights into somebody going to be a good fit or not for the environment.
Yeah, and it's funny. I have a similar. I kick off most of my interviews. I kick off with a question that's like, I've already read your resume, so don't
talk about that. Yeah.
But I want you to give me a 2-minute high level. What are your superpowers? What drives you? And what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Like, let me know who you are, and then let's have a conversation that dovetails off of that. 100% agree.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that, sort of circling back to the types of things that PI does for companies, like, we've all become obsessed with data. Mm-hmm. Certainly those of us in marketing and sales, we are obsessed with data, sometimes to a fault. And that's something I've picked on in some places where, I can hire people who claim to be marketers. They've never done any marketing whatsoever. All they know is data. And if the data told them that the best marketing was XYZ, they'd go do that regardless of the fact that it was just totally bad marketing. But yet we're not as obsessed with the data around people and their behaviors and the insights that psychometrics and other tools can provide on people. And I'm a reformed psychologist. I like to say a PhD dropout. And so I know intimately the value of psychometric research and understanding what motivates people and how to understand the types of behaviors you can see. But when businesses don't seem as obsessed with that data, and yet that's exactly what PI is providing. And so there's a renaissance waiting to happen. How are you going to continue to get people to see that there's as much value in this data as any other type of data the business may run on?
Yeah, so I think seeing is believing and experience is believing. So one of the hardest things, right? I often tell people that are going to, if you're taking a strategy assessment to understand what your strategy is, that's not that stressful. But if you're taking a behavioral assessment, it's like there are some people that are like, do I want to do this? And I'm always like, it's not going to tell you anything you don't know, right? But
what is it going to tell me?
But once it's there, right? Once it's in your face, it's like, all right, those are my strengths. Those are my caution areas, right? Oh, okay, right? And as you know, once you see the data, now you can do something with it. So I think for us, like even our dream teams release that we're having is the product, the magic is shown when you plot 2+ people. So you have a team, and then you get that strategy, and you're able to be like, oh, okay, our strategy is like a pathfinding strategy, and we're all down here, and we're all like process oriented people. This is right. Like maybe we should change our strategy a bit. Maybe we should add to our team so we can actually accomplish this. Like your brain, once you see the data, you immediately start to going. So I think that seeing is believing, experience is believing. Now, I was never, I wouldn't ever say I was a disbeliever in this, but when I first was exposed to the predictive index, and I made my first hire, and I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, because I made a lot of mistakes, and there have been people who've been like, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. Knowing what I know now, I know how that person's behavior will manifest in this culture, right? And
Yep.
and ultimately, you want to be like, do I really need to take that on, right? So
it's very true.
Yeah. So ultimately, by exposing people to this, by showing success with it, right? We've done validity studies that have shown that just on behavior alone, somebody's dominance factor, how much they can assert themselves, like every change in standard deviation equates to $100,000 in sales for a sales rep, right? Once you start to see that, you're like, oh, I should probably hire more people, right? Like that fit this, right? So it's not rocket science. It's just belief and faith and trust. And once you see other people start to do it, it becomes real, which is why over the past few years with talent optimization, our CEO reports, you can go to the Predictive Index website, take one of our behavioral assessments free. You can try our strategy assessments. You can experience, touch it, feel it. And the more that we get this in the hands of people, the more they're going to be excited to actually create a talent optimization strategy. And this will be a differentiator for businesses for the foreseeable future, because the majority of businesses don't think about it that way right
now. No, I agree with you completely. I guess sort of one final question on this point. Thinking about businesses that do invest in tools for talent optimization, like the predictive index, and really help employees understand their strengths and weaknesses and how they fit into organizations. And then how do you take those employees and empower them so when they leave an organization and go somewhere else, they can bring to the table, hey, this is who I am, and this what you need? Does this fit? Because you really want it to become this sort of way in which companies and individuals can almost negotiate over, oh yeah, we need this, you're this. How do we connect those things?
Sure, I think that's a fantastic question. So there's people, right? So as I said, I'm a maverick, right?
Yep.
On my team, right? Jenny, who's our VP of Branding Communications and Demand Gen, is also a maverick. I have Victoria, who's our head of product marketing, who's a captain. I have Jim, who's our head of sales, who's a captain. I have Ginger, who's head of our content production and content strategy, who's a strategist, right? That makeup, and I told you, we are a pathfinding team, and our strategy is a pathfinding strategy. We try to make that as best we can. Now, what I think, pathfinding, maverick, captain, those are we've created a cute little iconography, but ultimately, where this was in the past is the science behind it. Arnold Daniels was so excited about it, was like, here's how to read a pattern. It's like, okay, I need to get educated and figure out how to read this pattern. But the reality is, fabrics function in the same way. It's like a neighborhood. So we empower by creating this language internally, and I with this new strategy element as part of the design, aptitude of talent optimization will be critical for employees when they leave to say, hey, I was a strategist on a pathfinding team. This is a strategy that we were doing, and this is the value my superpowers to the table. I could bring that to the table too. It sounds like you have a similar strategy, or it sounds like you're doing something. We're empowering employees whose businesses have decided to subscribe to PI. That power, and a amazing part of our business is through word of mouth and referral. Or I was using PI here, and now I'm going to take it there because of.
Makes perfect sense. Have you should start an online marketplace? People, companies, we're looking for mavericks. with these things, right? It's an interesting thought to sort of leverage that type of data.
Yeah, an absolutely fantastic concept, and hopefully one day we have our dreams are big. We have a big.
I am sure. I am
Yeah.
sure. So we're running up on time here, although I could go on for hours and hours because it's super fascinating to me. Why don't you just sort of say, okay, given all that, given everything you know, given everything you've learned, give me a couple of pieces, or our audience, a couple of pieces of advice for 21, right? It's January of 2021. The world's going to keep on transforming around us in ways unpredictable and predictable. What's two good pieces of advice you would want to pass on?
So we've learned over the last year from a business perspective, it wasn't just about how to survive in a pandemic. It was how to show empathy, right? So much social injustice happening in the world as well. So if there's anything going forward, my advice would be double down on your values, double down on making sure that those are in Congress with your product and the value you bring to the world. Your corporate culture should be different than your brand, right? You should try to make those tight. And your brand should identify with those people who are going to get the most value from your product.
Yep.
Right? It isn't rocket science, but going back to those basics, I think, is really big. The other tip that I would give is you are way more capable, right? You can do so much more than you think you can. And I try to tell people on my team that all the time. We have no idea what we're capable of. So let's not limit ourselves, and let's not think we need all these resources to do what we're trying to do. Let's figure out a way. We have a Jim Spartalozzi on my sales team says FOMO, find a way or make it. And I think that embodies a lot, right? Like, you are capable, right? We need to empower our employees to take action, to take charge, to lead. And the only way that you're going to survive this is making sure you don't get ahead of your skis from a resource perspective. You don't want to overspend. You don't know what's going to happen in the market. You don't want to overhire because you don't want to have to peel back. That's the worst thing that you could do. So you need to figure out how to have that like Goldilocks happy medium of we have just the right amount. We should always feel like we're bootstrapped, right? Like, be comfortable being uncomfortable in that way, and we'll get through this, and we'll be much better for it.
Great advice. Agree completely. I'm a big believer that people are capable of much more than they think, and that I try to run a lean team, and I try to get people to step up and realize that they can do more. I also get them to realize that they can do less. They also often sort of forced into doing things they don't actually need to do. And so it's helping people see that reality as well.
Saying no is just, learning how to say no is just as powerful, right? And learning how to say yes all the time.
Absolutely agree. Well, Drew, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with me today. It was really interesting and valuable insights into the sort of human component of organizations, and I think you have an amazing job and a very cool company, and hopefully we'll be able to get to talk again, and hopefully everyone will check out what you have coming up, which is a product announcement next week and some events, and it should be really interesting. People should check out the Predictive Index. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Norman, and cheers to you for creating this Reset podcast. We're going to get through this by helping each other, by asking for help, by learning from each other. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of The Reset. I'm Norman Guadagno, CMO at Acoustic. We will see you next time. Visit us at acoustic.com.